When you think about what a gardener does or what a farmer does, they don't tend to just throw seeds in the ground or throw plants in the ground. They prepare the soil, right? They enrich the soil so that there's a much better chance that their seeds and plants will thrive. Now, when you think about what creatives need to do to enrich their soil so that everything you do is more likely to thrive, is more likely to be successful, we tend to think of things like, acquiring the necessary technical skills or acquiring the right network of people to help you, and those things are really important. But what we don't necessarily think about is sort of the tending of your mind soil, right? The getting your brain space ready so that you can not only be more successful in what you're doing, but so that you can actually enjoy what you're doing, that you can find what you do interesting, that you can handle adversity well, you can be resilient in the face of setbacks and challenges, and so that you can also move on gracefully when change is necessary to the next thing that you're going to be great at. Now, in order to do that, your mind space, your head has to be in the right place. You have to have the right mindset in order to really make the most of your potential and to enjoy the process of making the most of your potential. So I'm going to talk to you today about two mindsets that researchers like myself have studied now for a long time, and I'm going to start by talking about the one that isn't so good, the one that tends to hold us back, and unfortunately, the one that many of you probably have. Because, and I'm just saying that I don't know you, but I'm saying statistically it's likely, because it turns out most people walk around with this mindset without really even consciously realizing it. And in many ways, it interferes with our ability to be as successful as we might be. Certainly, it interferes with your ability to enjoy what you do, to handle stress effectively, and to handle change. And I call this the be good mindset. Okay, there are lots of names researchers use for it, but I like this idea of a be good mindset because ultimately, this is a mindset that says, whatever I'm doing, whatever I'm working on, whatever project I'm doing or new adventure I'm taking on, my goal, in some sense, is to show that I am good, right? And again, you may not be totally consciously thinking this. It can be kind of right below the surface of consciousness, but ultimately, whether you succeed or fail, you feel like is a reflection on how good you are. And so because of that, you kind of feel like you're always trying to prove yourself. Maybe to other people, often to other people, but also to yourself, right? And people end up with this kind of mindset in many ways, in many instances, because we think about our talents, right? Our abilities, how smart we are, how creative we are, how socially skilled we are, how much willpower we have, as things that sort of you either have or you don't, right? You have a certain amount of. And you either kind of won the DNA lottery or you didn't, and so you ended up with lots of creativity or you didn't, or you ended up smart or not. And when you think this way, it's then natural for you to feel like every time you're doing something that you want to be sort of proving, again, not just to other people, but to yourself, that you have a lot of this thing, right? I am creative, right? I am smart. And through my work, I show that, I demonstrate that to the world. And so when things go badly, of course, that's a real problem. The Be Good mindset is all about proving yourself. It's about demonstrating your skills, right? Showing that you have them, that you are talented. And again, and this can be relatively unconscious, you're not necessarily deliberately thinking this, but we're always comparing ourselves to other people. And particularly, we're concerned with performing better than those people, right? Because that's being smart, being creative, being socially skilled. They're all relative, right? They all kind of implicitly mean smarter than someone else, or more creative than someone else, or more socially skilled. So we're always kind of in the back of our minds comparing ourselves to other people, and that's what's going on in your brain space while you are trying to reach your goals in your career or in your personal life. This kind of mindset is a problem, as I said, because what happens when something goes wrong? When something goes wrong, you get negative feedback, there's a setback of some kind, very quickly, and again, without even necessarily realizing we're doing it, we immediately start to doubt our abilities. Maybe I'm not so smart. Maybe I'm not very socially skilled. Maybe I'm not so creative. Maybe I'm not cut out for this. How many people have ever heard someone say, I guess I'm not a math person? There's no such thing as a math person. This drives me absolutely crazy. There's no such thing as a math person. There are people who like math and people who don't. There are people who are good at math, but guess what? People who are good at math got good at math because they worked hard at math, right? There's really no other way around it. Right? And people are good at things because they devote their time and energy to developing their skills, right? But when you have a be good mindset, that's not how you think. You do some math, it's difficult, and you go, oh, I guess I'm not a math person, right? Or you try to take on a new business, and you have some difficulties, and you go, oh, I guess I'm really not cut out to be an entrepreneur. This kind of thinking ends up really holding us back. It also stresses us out, because when you're constantly thinking, this is a test of my ability, this is a test of my competence and my worth, then it's extremely stressful, right? I mean, everything has that added element of not only, is this project successful or not, but it says something about who I am. And then that's terrifying, right? So this really stresses us out, and now we know from decades of research that this kind of thinking really sets people up for failure. It makes them vulnerable as soon as things become difficult. And guess what? Life is full of difficult things. So it sets up a real pattern of vulnerability. People with this mindset are more depressed, they're more anxious, they're more likely to be helpless in the face of a setback. When they feel depressed, they do things like sit on the couch and eat chips and watch television and don't actually take any action to improve anything because they believe they can't, right? That there's something wrong with them, and that's why things aren't going well in their lives. Now, many of us think this way a lot. And we think this way without even necessarily realizing it. And if you have ever gotten really upset with yourself because if something went wrong in a project you were working on, then you were probably thinking this way. That somehow you screwed up, you lack something, you don't have what it takes. Okay, there is an alternative, and I like to call it the get better mindset. As Jocelyn mentioned, it's also called the growth mindset. There are lots of different researchers use different terms for it. But the get better mindset is just that. It's not about being good, it's about getting better. What do I mean by that? Well, instead of focusing on proving, you focus on improving. And I mean that very literally, that you reframe your goals and think about it not in terms of being, the most creative person, but improving in terms of my creativity, getting smarter, getting to be a better manager, right? Getting to be more socially skilled. And when you reframe your goals, when you use this framework to think about everything you do, a really dramatic shift happens. Instead of demonstrating our skills, we focus on developing them. The fact that you're all here in this room suggests that at least sometimes you think in terms of a get better mindset because you're all here to develop. And instead of thinking, and this is really important, if you don't remember anything else I say, please remember this. Instead of thinking about your performance relative to other people with a get better mindset instead say, no, what's really important is, am I performing better than I did in the past, right? Am I learning? Am I getting better, right? So it's not, am I the smartest person in the room? It's, am I smarter than I was a week ago, a month ago, a year ago, because I've been taking the time to learn, right? Are my social skills improving? Am I a better manager today than I was a year ago? Those are the kinds of questions you ask yourself when you have a get better mindset, and they lead to very different patterns. And I want to show you quickly, some data, because whenever I talk about this stuff, there's a tendency for people to say, that's nice, it sounds really good, it sounds like the kind of thing, someone on Oprah would say, and we're all, supposed to love ourselves, and they go, but this, in the real world, this kind of thinking doesn't work. Wrong. And let me show you, and I can show that with data. Okay, for example, how do we handle challenges? Challenges happen all the time in life. In the laboratory, in the studies that I do, we create challenges for people in a number of ways. I'm just going to show you one of them. And this was a study where we interrupted people while they were working. Right? We try to come up with ways of making things difficult that are a lot like real life. Okay? So in this study, we interrupted some people, not others, while they were working on a task of problem solving. Half of the people, when they came into the lab, we said, great, you're gonna work on these problems, and we are going to evaluate on the basis of your answers how smart you are, and we're going to compare how smart you are to the other people who are in the experiment. So you're getting the sense, right, that we're creating this be good mindset for these people, right? They think the point of what they're doing is to prove how smart they are. The other half of the people, they come into the lab, we say, hey, we're going to give you these problems. This is a great learning opportunity for you to develop your problem-solving skills. You can get better at these over time. So they think the point of what they're doing is to get better. Same exact task, but two different purposes, right? Two different mindsets. So what happens? Here are the people who have the be good mindset. We told them that we are measuring them and measuring their intelligence. Here's how they work with no interruptions. Here's how well they do once we start coming in every few minutes and saying, oh, I'm sorry, could you do this other thing? You know, just like life, okay? So you can see that as soon as we start interrupting them, they're starting, it's disturbing their performance, it's messing them up, they're kind of like pulling them out of their mindset of working, and they're starting to have some self-doubt, like, oh, okay, this is hard, I don't know if I can work under these conditions, I think this might be messing me up, now I'm starting to doubt myself. What happens when people instead think the point of what they're doing is to learn and improve? What you can see is that actually here are the people that were not interrupted, here are the people that were interrupted, and we find this again and again, that actually people do better when they have a get better mindset, when we throw problems at them, when we give them a little bit of adversity. They kind of go like, ooh, this is tricky, okay, but I can do this because I can still learn. The point of this is to learn, okay? So we find this pattern, and by the way, this is significantly, if you look at just compare the two interruption groups together, these people with the get better mindset are doing significantly better on the problems. Right? So they're answering a lot more problems correctly. And this is real life, right? I mean, when's the last time you got to work uninterrupted by anyone, right? This is what life is like. And then we find this with all kinds of ways of manipulating difficulty. Here's another one. Sorry to go so fast, but there's just so much good stuff to show you. Okay. Here's another one where we basically fail people on purpose. It's really not fun to be in one of my experiments. I don't recommend it. So don't do that. In this particular study, what we did was actually this one I didn't fail anybody. Okay, that's good. This was a daily diary study. People just lived their lives. And they lived their lives for 3 weeks, and every day we asked them to tell us in an online daily diary about the worst thing that happened to them that day, how they dealt with it, if they dealt with it at all. We asked them to tell us about their day and whether they did their dishes or, you know, took a shower, went to meetings, did all the things you're supposed to do. And we asked them to tell us about their feelings. And what we did, in this case, was we measured their mindset. So we just determined who has generally speaking, a be good mindset, who has a get better mindset, and who kind of has a mix of the two, right? And here's what we find. We find that these are the people that have primarily a be good mindset, okay? So these are people who are walking around in life feeling that most of the things they do reflect on their competence or their likability or their self-worth, right? They're being measured all the time by what they do. And what you can see is that the more upset they said they were, so on the bottom of the graph we have the upsetness, and on this side we have whether or not they actually took action to solve the problem. What you can see is the more upset they get, the less likely they are to actually do something to fix their problem. So this is the classic, I'm depressed and I'm going to eat potato chips on the couch and not really do anything about it. Okay, this is when people have a mixed bag. So they say about half the time, I think, in terms of be good, and half the times I think and get better. And then you can see, well, it's a little bit better. But now there's essentially no relationship between how bad the thing was and whether or not they take action to do something about it. Here's our dominant get better group. So these are the people that say most of the time, not all the time, nobody does it all the time, but most of the time I think in terms of getting better. I think in terms of improving. I compare myself to myself in the past rather than to other people. And here, the more upset they get, the more depressed and anxious they felt, the more likely they were to take action to solve the problem. So instead of depression and anxiety be something that traps you, right, and keeps you from fixing things in your life, it actually is a kind of fuel for them. Things are bad. I feel like crap. I better go do something about it, right? So it's a really adaptive way to react to when things go wrong. And let's face it, things do go wrong. Okay, here in a nutshell, a summary, are all the things that in studies we've been able to find very reliably come from adopting a get better mindset for whatever the goal is that you're pursuing, whether, again, it's in your professional life or your personal life. Interest and enjoyment, huge effects here. When people are focused on improving rather than proving themselves, they constantly say, I enjoy what I'm doing more, I find it more interesting. We even find this among freshmen in chemistry classes who Like, nobody wants to take chemistry when they're a freshman. They hate it. But these people say, well, no, actually, I can find there's a few interesting things going on in chemistry class. So they can find what's interesting and experience enjoyment when they're thinking in this way. Deeper thinking, another very reliable effect. Thinking about what you're doing in terms of improving naturally makes you kind of go deeper, make more connections, and really kind of engage in what you're doing with far more deeply. Not surprising, creativity goes hand in hand with a get better mindset. People find they're able to be much more creative when they think this way. Persistence, this is super important. One of the big reasons why we find the last thing, which is superior performance, again and again and again, with people who think in terms of getting better, is because of their persistence. When things go wrong, and they will, people who have a get better mindset say, well, that stinks. They're still up, like they're not happy. Nobody likes it when things go wrong. But they say, well, it's okay because I can still improve, right? I can still get better. This isn't a reflection on my worth. This is just a bump in the road, and I'm going to get back on and try harder. And in general, that's what we find people do who have a get better mindset. They kind of say, okay, time to try something new. Look for a new strategy. Maybe I need help from an expert. Okay, more to tell you. So you need the get better mindset. Do you need the get better mindset? Yes, you need it. And really at any stage in your career, you need this mindset. Why? Well, if you're just starting out, the learning curve is very steep. You're going to feel like an idiot a lot. That's just what happens when you're just starting out. So it's really important to have a get better mindset to be able to learn in those kinds of stressful environments and to handle setbacks with grace. It's important if you're in the middle of your career, and let's say you're now managing a team for the first time. Wow, is that really complicated and nothing anyone ever trains you for ever. So there are a lot of mistakes you'll make as a manager of a team. You're juggling projects and you're giving feedback. Wow, that in and of itself is a whole different talk that I could give about how hard it is to give feedback. And so these things are very difficult to do. Having a get better mindset about yourself as a manager and trying to convey a get better mindset to other people is really important. It sets the tone for how everyone works under you, and I'll talk about that more in a second. Changing careers, again, really helpful. Scott talked about this. Jocelyn mentioned it too. If you're switching up every 4 years to a new kind of work, you better have a get better mindset, because each one of those new opportunities, each one of those career changes is another chance, if you have a be good mindset, to judge the heck out of yourself and to find yourself wanting. And if you do that, you're never going to be successfully keeping up with changes and seizing opportunities. To do that, you need a get better mindset. That's going to give you the confidence, give you patience with yourself, and make you much more comfortable with change and much more comfortable with a little bit of risk. So wherever you are in your career, it is never too late to start thinking, I need to shift to a get better mindset. So how do you do it, right? Because this would be totally useless if I didn't tell you actually how you do this. So let's talk about that. How can you change your mindset? Mindsets are funny things. As I mentioned, the one you've been walking around with, you probably didn't even know you were walking around with, which presents sort of problem number one, that mindsets work in a kind of an automatic fashion. So it takes time to shift them, and that's one of those things I want you to have a get better mindset about shifting to a get better mindset, because it's going to take some time, and you're going to find yourself thinking in be good ways, and you're going to need to be patient as you try to make this transition. And nobody ever completely thinks in get better mindset terms all the time. There are, when you're in that having a moment where you're being judged or evaluated, and people really are judging and evaluating you, it's very hard not to think in terms of being good. But what our research shows is the more get better thinking you can introduce into your life, the better off you are. So how do we do it? The first way is to reframe your goals. And to do that, I actually do recommend writing your goals down. People love to talk about, does writing your goals down help or hurt? The truth is, it's always good to write anything down. It's not magical, but it's a good thing. Write your goals down, and what I recommend people do is after you've written your goals down, the way you would normally say them, then try to rewrite them using what we call the Get Better Mindset triggering words. These are actually the words we use in the laboratory to get people thinking in terms of Get Better Mindset. These are words like improve, progress, develop, become, and grow. So let me just give you some examples. Let's say one of your goals was I want to be great at communicating my ideas. right? Maybe you're somebody who feels like that's an area that you could use, you could be a little better in. And so you say, well, this is what I want to do. I want to be great at communicating my ideas. Rewrite that into something like, I want to learn how to become great at communicating my ideas, right? Just by making that switch, you're immediately kind of taking some of the pressure off, because I want to be great, right? Well, the next time you don't do so well communicating your ideas, you're not great, so you failed, right? But if you phrase your goal this way, I want to learn how to become great, and the next time you try to communicate your ideas, you don't do so well, that's okay. You haven't failed. You're learning, right? So it's a totally different kind of feeling. I want to manage my time productively. Who doesn't want to do that, right? Again, reframe it. I want to improve my time management skills. Again, because the next time, if this is your goal, I want to manage my time productively, and you really kind of screw the pooch and have a week where your time management is just out the window, then you have failed. But if you talk about it this way, I want to improve, then you haven't failed. You just need to continue to improve and find new ways to help yourself. Okay, for managers who are out there, people who actually have people, or even really if you just work with other people and you have to give feedback to your colleagues from time to time, it's very important to know how to give feedback in a way that creates get better mindsets. Criticism and praise, and I cannot say that enough, criticism and praise should always focus on the process, not the person. What do I mean by that? So in other words, praise or criticize effort, like you didn't put in enough effort, or I love how much effort you put in, persistence, strategy, attitude, because these are the things that actually make you successful or not. We wouldn't generally think, of saying to a colleague, wow, you didn't do a good job on that, you're an idiot. But we don't think twice about saying, wow, Steve, you did a great job on that, you're a genius, right? Because that feels good to say. Only problem is it creates a be good mindset, right, for Steve, because Steve's thinking, oh, I'm good at this because I'm a genius. And the next time Steve screws something up, what is he going to think? Oh, well, maybe I'm not a genius after all, right? So you can't kind of have it both ways. You can't praise the person but criticize the process. Really, everything should be always focused on the process, because that helps people to think in terms of process, and that's part of the get better mindset. Oh, I'm out of time already. Okay, last thing. This is so important. Again, remember I told you I want to remember one thing, and that is compare yourself to yourself rather than compare yourself to other people. This is a great study that shows the power of this. What they did was they had high school students, then the experimenter came in, and each student was going to work on 10 really complicated problems. And to some of the students, the experimenter says, okay, what I'm going to do is you're going to work on these 2 sets of 5 problems, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to compare your scores with everybody else in the class. Okay? What kind of thing does that create? Creates a be good mindset, right? You're comparing to other people. In the other experiment, in the other condition, the experimenter says, I'm going to compare how well you did on the last 5 problems, 6 through 10, to how well you did on the first 5, right? 1 through 5. So what does that create? What happens is when the kids are told they're going to be compared to other people, and then they measure their mindset, lo and behold, most of those kids have a be good mindset, right? They think the point of what they're doing is to be good compared to everybody else. When they tell the same kids, the different set of kids, we're going to compare your last set to your first set, they think the point is to get better. Why else would you compare my last set to my first set if you weren't trying to see whether or not I improved? Okay, great so far. So now, once you have these 2 groups of people, the question is, how well do they actually do? Okay, here's how well the people who are told they're going to be compared to others do on the first set and the second set. So here's the first 5 problems, second 5 problems. Right? So what do you see? No improvement, right? No improvement at all. Here's what happens when you tell people that you're going to compare the last set to the first set. Oh my gosh, they improved. Why? Because they thought the point was to improve. And so in this condition, they actually were able to find, it turns out there was one strategy that was really, really good for solving these problems, but it was kind of hard to find. Guess who found it? These people, right? Because they thought the point was to improve, they found a way to improve, right? When people don't think the point is to improve, they won't find it, okay? So again, this is a really, I can't tell you enough times, every time you catch yourself comparing yourself to someone else, say, no, I'm not going to compare myself to Steve. I'm going to compare myself to me a year ago. How am I doing? And that's the question that really matters. So in summary, you may think that you can't afford to focus on getting better, but the science says you can't afford not to. And I mean that. Okay, thank you so much.